Hello, Washington Commanders fans, and welcome to another edition of the Washington Wrap. It's been a minute, so let me explain the premise of this show. We are a single issue, 10-minute per episode show focused on the Washington Commanders, and by that I mean that we only focus on one issue per episode, and we do it with a time limit of 10 minutes on the clock. We got to wrap it up in that time limit. Joining me today is my co-host Felix Trammell, and of course it's draft day, so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about what the Washington Commanders are doing in the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft, which is at Las Vegas tonight or tomorrow night, depending on how early we get this out. Washington currently sits at pick 11. There hasn't been a lot of noise about whether they'll trade up or trade down. Let's start the 10-minute clock and dive straight into it. Let's bring in Felix here. Clock is ticking, Felix. So, first things first, I personally do not think that the Washington Commanders will trade up or down. I think they'd like to trade down, but I don't think there's a very active market for trading down in this draft. Where's your head at in that regard?
Yeah, I honestly think they're gonna have to pick at 11 because I don't see anybody that they're so enamored with that they would move up for.
Definitely agree.
They would probably go back, but then there's nobody really that someone's gonna jump for. It's not that quarterback that someone might jump 6, 7, 8 spots to go after. So I think it's just going to be what falls to them at 11, but they're going to be picking at 11. Now, I do think there's a chance they move back in the tail end of the first round, but I think
move back up into the first.
Yes, like
okay.
A few years ago, like they did with Montez Sweat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, look, that could happen.
I do have a sense. I have a feeling of that. So I'm going to put that one out there now.
Well, I mean, if it happens, we'll give you a hat tip for sure. So, look, for the purposes of this exercise, let's assume that they stay at 11, which I think they do, and it sounds like you think they'll do that as well. There's a small handful of names who keep getting connected to Washington at the pick. It's safety Kyle Hamilton, it's the wide receivers Wilson, Olave, and London. It's really those four guys. It's gotten to the point now that if it's not one of those four guys, I think the fan base will be surprised.
Right.
Is there anyone outside those four guys that you think is a red hot chance as it stands today, 24 hours out from the draft as we record this?
Also, Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU. I think there's a good chance that he could be around at 11. Like, it's going to be somewhere between Hamilton and Stingley and two of those wide receivers. And I think I'm not sure they're going to lean, but one of those, that's going to be that group. It's either going to be Stingley or Hamilton if Stingley falls that far, or Olave or London, whichever the receivers that's still there at around 11. So I think that would be the only other name I would throw in there would be Stingley, just because they are looking for defensive backup. It's enamored that they're looking for defensive backup, and Stingley fits that big physical corner that Ron Rivera likes. So he can be in that mix as well if he falls there. And it's going to be very fluid what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a fascinating pick. Pick 11, obviously, we all know how numbers work. We're just one pick outside the top 10, and so much attention gets focused on the top 10 of the draft each year. And it's going to be a fascinating top 10. There's a genuine chance there's not a single quarterback taken in the top 10. There's multiple teams who have multiple picks in the top 10. I think the current projections are that the top 3 picks will all be edge rushers. It's a very, very interesting draft because, as we noted already, there's not a lot of top tier talent that teams are going to look to trade up into the top 10 for. And therefore, it's strangely, and look, this always bites us in the arse when we say stuff like this, it's strangely a pretty easy draft to predict as it stands right now. Like, we know who the top guys are. It's just a matter of which teams they'll actually go to. But, I don't think there'll be a huge shock in the top 10 of the draft. I don't think there's going to be, whoa, we've picked Matt Corral, to Atlanta or something. I don't think anything like that's going to happen this year. So because of that, it makes picking or, projecting who Washington's going to take at 11 interesting because it seems a little too easy. Right. Washington has some pretty easy to identify needs. We need some help on offense and we need to solidify the back end of the defense. There's guys there, like we've highlighted, who fit those bills. So therefore, makes a lot of sense to project them. I personally, and I've been saying this for weeks now on Twitter, I think Olave, my Australian accent, that name, good fun. I think he's the guy that Rivera likes the most. 6'1", strong route runner. I've compared him to Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs as that archetype of wide receiver in the NFL. That you're going to beat guys with your speed, your agility, and your route running. You're not a jump ball up, go and get a guy. Even though we know Terry McLaurin can also do that. And when you pair him with Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas and of course McLaurin on offense, that's a really dynamic and flexible offense. But then you look at a guy like Drake London or a Garrett Wilson, who are both excellent wide receivers in their own right. They each bring something to the table as well. So if all three, and it won't happen, but if all three of London, Wilson, and Olave were on the board at 11, do you think there's a specific archetype of wide receiver that Ron Rivera would prefer?
I think out of the three, I probably would lean with you with Olave, just because he's very similar to Terry McLaurin in that his route running is very high elite. Those Ohio State running wide receivers have come out being extremely good route runners. And I think that bodes well for Scott Turner's system. You don't necessarily need the supreme physical athlete, but if you're 6'1" and you can run every route on that route tree and can get open, it'll tremendously help the offense. So I would try to lean Olave. London has a little bit of the injury concerns. Garrett's a little bit more physical, and Ron Rivera does like that. So if he's willing to really block and be physical, it could be that. But I think Olave would get the slight edge.
Yeah, I agree. You know who Garrett Wilson sort of reminds me of? And I haven't seen this name compared to him too much, but he sort of reminds me of Pierre Garçon. There's some similarities in his, physicality game in that regard. But it's been fascinating because I've seen guys like Drake London compared to everyone from Mike Evans to Josh Doxson. I've seen Garrett Wilson compared from everyone to top tier guys to bottom tier guys. Same with Chris Olave. Like, there is no consensus amongst these three wide receivers. Some people love one guy and hate the other guys. So if Washington does select one of these three guys tomorrow night or tonight, depending on what time you're listening to this, there's going to be a subset of upset fans out there. It's fascinating how that's broken out.
I think that's the theme of the draft. I mean, there's no surefire guys in this draft, and it's the ambiguity. It's kind of doing that. So, and we've talked about this with the quarterbacks. There are quarterbacks who people think they're good, others think they're terrible. Same thing with these receivers. Some think Olave's top 10, top 5 potential, and then some guys see a slot inside receiver, a third tier receiver. So it's like, it's hard to predict. And I think that for the fans, it's not going to be a universal acceptance pick. Like, oh, we are good, we got that pick. I don't think that's going to be that. And I think the proving is just going to be on the field. So there's no way to say it, but it will be interesting to understand by the pick the team's strategy, because I think the strategy has been very ambiguous and people don't understand, and I think that's where frustration of the fans is coming from.
Yeah. There's no slam dunk, and like, even if one of those top guys slides and we take them at pick 11, someone who's pretty routinely mocked in the top 5, top 6 picks, say like not one of the edge guys, but say like an Evan Neal, for example. Even that, I don't think would be like celebrated as a slam dunk pick, because people will be like, oh, offensive line, blah blah blah. It's such a strange draft. So look, we've got 2 minutes left here on the clock. Let's stake our reputations with some final predictions as to who is going to be picked and why and where. So for me, I'm going Olave at pick 11. Like, I think teams, especially Washington, do everything they can to really guard their draft board and guard those secrets tightly. It's the strongest thing that they guard each year. I think the team has signaled pretty significantly that they love him. We've saw the footage of them talking to him at the Pro Day at Ohio State. We've had, media bits of Ron Rivera talking about how much he likes him and his route running and everything like that. I don't think they've gone so far as to, really tip their pick, but there's a lot of smoke around him. So that's my pick. I've put it out on Twitter for a while now. It hasn't changed. We'll see what happens in the last 24 hours before the draft. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would probably do 60-40 40, 60 for Olave, 40 for Kyle Hamilton. I think if Hamilton's there, I think it's going to be hard to pass him just because of what he can do in that system and essentially replacing Landon Collins, who's going to be moving on July 1. I think if he's there, it's going to present a problem. And it's not necessarily a bad problem. It's going to present a choice. But if Kyle Hamilton's gone, it'll definitely be Olave if he's there.
Got someone at my door going nuts, and they keep pushing my doorbell, so apologies for my dog barking in the background. Look, I couldn't agree with more of that. I can't wait for this round 1 of the draft. 10 minutes is up. I think we've wrapped it up. It's gonna be so interesting to see who the Commanders select as their my dog, their first pick. Hold on one sec. There we go. First episode back, we've got some chaos. You got to like it. The first pick in Commanders team history is gonna be an interesting one. But look, the Washington Rap is going to be here to cover it. We've taken a break. You're about to see in a minute. Why we've been a little bit quiet over the off season, but we're here. We haven't changed. So we'll be here in some respects to cover it. You can find us on Twitter. You can see our handles under our names here. You can find me at ChadwicoTWW, and you can find Felix at Blessed Commander. Which I just realized I need to update your graphic for it. We still have you as at HCTR and Blessed. So look, when I tweet this out, you can find him on Twitter there as well. Felix, always a pleasure talking Washington football with you, my friend. Let's have some fun with the draft.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Hey everyone, I know we've been a little bit MIA since the end of that last season, but I just wanted to give you guys an explanation for why. In January, my baby girl was born. My second kid number 2. This is Noah, dressed appropriately in Nats gear, as you can see. This off season we've just been pretty quiet, living and getting adjusted to the 2-kid dad life for me. But rest assured, we'll be here, and obviously we've got this episode today for the draft. And as the off season and the preseason continues and ramps up to training camp, so will we. But just having a little bit of a dad break over the off season, and that's why we've been a little bit quiet. Cheers.